Welcome, everyone, to another LinkedIn Live event. My name is Mark Pickett, and I'm the Technology Transfer Program Manager here at SAE Government Technologies. As many of you know, SAE Government Technologies collaborates with government, industry, and academia to solve government's toughest technical mobility challenges. In today's LinkedIn Live event, we are showing how SAE GT's collaboration with one university is bringing greater impact to the government. To help me do that, I'm joined here by Ashley Breitner, Managing Director, Economic Growth Institute, Electric Vehicle Center at the University of Michigan. And remember to the audience, place questions in the comments section as we go through today's event. Ashley, welcome. Please tell us about your role and what you do.
Hi, Mark. It's great to be here today. I'm super excited to hopefully be able to engage a little bit with our audience and chat with you this afternoon. So a little bit about my role. I joined the university here probably about 8 years ago now. Prior to that, I came over from industry in the testing, inspection, and certification worlds. And since joining the university, I play my kind of wear two hats here right now. Managing Director for the Economic Growth Institute here at the university. And I'll describe EGI's role here in just a second, but I also serve as Workforce Director for the new Electric Vehicle Center here at the university that was just stood up about a year ago now. Most do not know necessarily about EGI or the Economic Growth Institute, but we're a really unique unit at the university. We've been in existence here for over 40 years, so definitely not new. But what we do is really work to leverage the resources of the university, including our research, our technology, our expert faculty and staff, to really help our economy, particularly here in the state of Michigan and beyond, and to really foster innovation and grow equitable economic growth. So, when you think about kind of our structure at EGI, we historically get really busy when there's some type of economic shock happening, whether that's in a supply chain, across the state, a pandemic, whatever it may be. But a lot of our history has been in leveraging the resources of the university to support both companies and communities throughout the state. And in those companies, particularly with a focus on small to medium-sized manufacturers. We know that we can't have a strong economy throughout the state of Michigan here without having strong businesses and strong companies. And likewise, we can't have strong communities, or we can't have strong companies if we don't have strong communities to support them. Right. So we really kind of stand on those two legs, strong legs of EGI throughout our history. We also do a lot of activity at EGI kind of in the workforce development space. Our team takes a very boots on the ground approach to supporting companies and communities. And so, like I said, about a year ago, we were asked to help support and lead the workforce development pillar of the Electric Vehicle Center. That, obviously is foundational. Having a strong workforce to support companies and communities is also critical. So we're excited to be launching some new initiatives here in the next year or so to really help make sure that Michigan remains the leader in the automotive sector into the future of electrification and beyond. And I'll be happy, just throughout our discussion to kind of describe some of our programs that we currently and in the past have been administered throughout our history here at EGI.
Great. I guess I learned something. I didn't realize that EGI has been around for 40 years, so that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, definitely not new. And we, really the foundation behind our work is we really listen to the needs of the communities and companies we work with, and develop and design programming to help address those needs. Most of them, those programs are funded by federal or state resources to help support the companies and the communities that we're working with on a regular basis.
Awesome. We'll talk a little bit more about EGI's engagement to problem solve and to create solutions and to engage in the community as they engage with government agencies. Can you expand upon that, please?
Yeah, sure. So like I said, our team is out there on the road every day. We have about a staff of 25 or so individuals. Most of them come from industry or economic development backgrounds. So they've really kind of lived the challenges that small to medium-sized businesses and communities throughout the state also live on a daily basis. They really listen to those needs and challenges and look to understand the opportunities within those organizations, and then designing programming, which in both supporting companies and communities, we very much provide run kind of a similar model where we're often a resource provider. We provide not only capacity building support, but also technical assistance to the businesses and communities based on what those needs are that we heard. So we listen to those needs, design the programs, and then, typically we're pursuing federal or state sources, as I mentioned. So we have a long history of developing relationships and cultivating relationships with many of our federal partners, but also all the way down to our local government stakeholders. To really make sure that we are leveraging all the resources that we can to support the companies and communities throughout the state. For example, when you look back at some of our historical work, which is interesting now in the time we're in this shift to electric vehicles, when you look at the previous automotive crisis, for example, this was a case where EGI's work was reactive. To a shock to our economy, right? In Michigan here, there's a strong automotive manufacturing sector is the lifeblood of our economy. And so we at that time were reactive to the automotive crisis, but with funding from the Economic Development Administration and other federal and state partners, we ran kind of a two-track program. We helped over 19 communities kind of throughout Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, and Wisconsin to really help those communities kind of dig deep and help start recovering from this shock that their communities were facing as employers were closing, they were losing tax base, and they were facing some major challenges there. Likewise, on our community team, on our company team, we helped 211 firms. All of those firms were considered very high risk for insolvency, and 98% of them came through on the other end, and were ultimately helped or saved at to get through that time period. But the thing that was interesting is this is a time when employment was declining at over 17%. And we actually grew employment in those companies at a rate of 4%. So not only did we help stabilize those companies in the economy, we also helped to grow them and diversifying them into other markets. We're doing the same thing right now, which is interesting. Thankfully, we are more proactive in this particular case. We have programs currently running right now. One is funded by Department of Energy to help communities throughout the state think and prepare for the energy transition that they are likely to see impacts from here in the state. And then likewise, the Economic Development Administration also is helping support small businesses, manufacturing companies that have been historically in that internal combustion engine supply chain, think about their future in electrification or other markets to remain stable. So we're really thankful we're on the front end of this. We're helping them from a proactive perspective, as opposed to years ago, a few decades ago, where we were being reactive. But without those federal funders, without the support we have at the federal level to do this work, we would not be able to.
No, that's great. I appreciate you going into some of the statistics. I mean, going from a unfavorable 17% growth to swinging that to 4% favorable, that's an amazing accomplishment. You think about 211 companies that you help sort of transition and pull out of that valley. think of all the the employees and their families that were able to stay here and stay employed. So I just think that's a fantastic impact in the space. So thank you.
Thank you.
Again, the audience, please put your comments or your questions in the comment section. So when we get to the end, we'll try to answer those questions to the best of our ability. Our audience, Ashley, may not know this, but we are collaborating right now on a grant from, University of Michigan and SAE Government Technologies are collaborating on a grant from the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation for energy storage and workforce development. Maybe you could take a minute and describe the Michigan Defense Resiliency Consortium that you formed, and as a lead applicant, were able to land the grant from OLDCC.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be happy to do that. Yeah, it's been a great opportunity for us to collaborate. We very much in the past kind of worked, next to each other in many of these spaces, and this is a great opportunity for us to truly be able to work together. Just a little background for the audience on kind of how this program came about, or the consortium came about. At EGI here, we've actually been working with the Office of Local Defense Community Cooperation, or better known as OLDCC, at the Department of Defense for about 15 years now, through a variety of capacities to help small to medium-sized manufacturers in Michigan in the defense supply chain remain resilient, strong, become cybersecurity compliant, lots of different things we've helped them with. So the OLDCC has a funding opportunity that I think they've run for maybe the last 3 or 4 years now, to designate defense manufacturing communities throughout the United States. And we know that particularly that here in Michigan, we are definitely leading the way when it comes to energy storage and battery opportunities. With them, we have close to 12,000 small to medium-sized manufacturers here in the state. And Michigan is one of the top leading states when it comes to planned battery capacity in North America between now and 2030. So we know there's a tremendous, tremendous opportunity there. But what we also know is many energy storage and battery companies doing work today in the commercial sector, or doing R&D and technology development, are not necessarily doing defense contracting. There are some challenges and hoops to jump through in order to do that. And so we saw a tremendous opportunity to bring this consortium together, consortium of partners, and I'll list a few of them here in a second, but really bring us all together to think about how can we leverage all of these great resources and investments going on here in the state to help support the Department of Defense in their mission towards electrification with a focus on energy storage and batteries. So we brought this consortium together. Let's see here, it would have been probably about 1.5 years ago now. And some of the consortium members include, obviously, SAE Government Technologies, the Michigan Defense Center under the Michigan Economic Development Corporation, the state of Michigan's Manufacturing Extension Partnership, which is Michigan Manufacturing Technology Center. We also have at the table MXD, which is a Department of Defense funded organization, actually based in Chicago, but they are very much focused on advanced manufacturing and digital manufacturing. Let's see here, Centropolis, based at Lawrence Tech, the accelerator program there, the Office of Future Mobility and Electrification, and many other partners, including some of our very strong in defense county level partners, such as Oakland and Macomb County. So there's a whole group of us that kind of came together and really put forward a proposal to OLDCC. And we were awarded the designation for the state of Michigan, focused on energy storage and battery. It's a 5-year designation, but then behind that also comes a scope of work and a grant to support funding for the next 3 years for a series of activities that the four partners, all the partners are going to execute kind of under 4 pillars of work.
Thank you for that. This is great for the state. And I'm grinning because I remember 2.5 years ago when you and I were talking about our designation for SCORE, supply chains of recovered elements, where we're demonstrating harvesting critical elements from waste streams in the United States through the same office, the OLDCC. So it's nice. It's amazing how fast time flies, but it's interesting to see the collaboration across the other subrecipients, and most of those are in the state of Michigan. So that's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah. I think there's it was fun to see those two pieces come together, because at the end of the day, we can create all the energy storage and battery infrastructure in the world, but if we don't have the rare earth minerals to support that infrastructure, all our energy is for what, right? So it's really going to be interesting to see over the next couple of years how those two consortiums really start to work together to leverage, the activities going on.
So you may have touched upon this, but the expected outcomes of this collaboration with this grant, what kind of impact? I mean, it is centered around energy storage and batteries, but can you talk a little bit about what the expected outcomes are and the impact it's going to have?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll just describe a little bit about kind of the 4 pillars of work, which will help to give the listeners an idea of some of the outcomes here. The first pillar is what we call is essentially asset mapping. We want to make sure that what we think is out there across the state in terms of energy storage and battery assets, that we have those detailed and cataloged as much as we possibly can in a way that is designed to inform Department of Defense in areas where they have particular interests or gaps. So we're working closely with them on that to make sure that the asset mapping we are doing across the state is going to be valuable to them in the long run. And there's a tremendous amount of resources, so there's a lot of work going on there. We also have a technology acceleration pillar. So this particular piece is really going to help companies kind of in that hard tech innovation space to further their mission and provide technical assistance and resources to support them. That's being led by the Centropolis Accelerator, and we're super excited to have them on as a partner. The third pillar is technical assistance, and this is really focused more on your current. It's kind of a combination of things, but it's mainly focused on companies that have some barrier in doing defense contracting. They have maybe great skills and capabilities in energy storage and battery, but there's some barrier to them then doing that, providing that support to the Department of Defense. We know sometimes things like cash flow within these companies can be a barrier because there is significant upfront cost often on defense contracts.
Sure.
That are just not always easy, for companies to manage. So this pillar will actually provide assessments and direct technical assistance and funding to support companies in getting through some of those particular barriers. And then the last piece is workforce development, which is where the SAE team and also in partnership with MXD come into play. We will be developing things like an EV hiring guide. SAE is heavily working on some battery standards, training, and then hopefully eventually certification programs to support those standards and training opportunities. We know there's a strong need in that space for this. Every meeting I'm in with our ecosystem partners say that need for standardization of our workforce, particularly, those working in the manufacturing facilities themselves, is really important. And then also we'll be developing a community equity plan to make sure that as all these resources roll out across the state, whether it's through the consortium or otherwise, that we're truly being intentional about reaching out to all of our community stakeholders, and all of those where there's an opportunity for them to participate, engage, gain work, in this particular sector. So really being intentional about reaching out to those in historically excluded communities to make sure that their voices are heard and that they're at the table for these opportunities.
Oh, that's great. A diversified industrial base makes us stronger for sure. So
Sure.
I want to emphasize a comment that was made a little bit ago in the program, and that is being proactive. You talked about the automotive crisis in 2008 and moving through that and the things that you did in the community in the state of Michigan. That was fantastic. But I think about things like the supply chain in the automotive space transitioning from traditional combustion engines to EVs. And I know that SAE, for example, is involved with the Department of Energy through Argonne National Lab to develop an ICE to EV playbook. And I know that's relevant to this work here. And so as we look to additional funding in the future, collaboration makes us stronger in terms of making an impact. Nobody can do everything. And I think government stakeholders look to well-formed teams that complement skill sets and capabilities to really make an impact and stretch that taxpayer dollar to make a greater impact. So the stuff that you just described about the Michigan Defense Resiliency Consortium, I think plays to being proactive and creating stronger communities and the industrial base. So that's fantastic.
For sure.
I want to sort of double click on, collaborating with nonprofits like SAE. You mentioned that we have sort of the workforce piece for the OLDCC grant. Can you, from your own perspective, kind of talk about how collaborating with a nonprofit like SAE improves impact?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, definitely when it comes to the Defense Consortium, from our perspective, SAE has, experience in places we don't. You all have many individuals that work or have worked in government contracting and really understand kind of the nuts and bolts behind that. You understand kind of some of those different contracting mechanisms like OTAs, other transactional authorities, and others that that's not been our historical funding mechanisms that we've had. And they're really important insights to have, especially as we help companies, like I said, bridge some of those gaps or break down some of those barriers that they have in doing government contracting. So that is a tremendous resource to this particular consortium. Also, obviously, many nonprofits like SAE have great relationships with their federal partners and other funding sources to help make sure that we're getting the resources out there, we're having the right conversations to build these consortiums out in not only in the short term, but also in an effective, sustainable way long term. As we know, with any of these kind of larger funding opportunities, one of the first questions they ask you when you submit an opportunity is how are you going to sustain this after the funding runs out, right? And so I think having those critical partnerships that SAE and other nonprofits do to figure out what does this look like, how do we create a model that's going to be sustainable to move on past this initial round of funding is really, really critical and important. Also, you have a great extensive membership base within, obviously,
For
also
sure.
broader SAE partners. And those members are great resources when it comes to providing insights from industry to drive those needs. And just contributing to make sure that whatever we're developing at the end of the day is going to add value in their worlds.
No, thank you for that perspective. You mentioned membership, both individual membership and company membership. We have an organization that allows companies to come together in a pre-competitive, safe environment where they don't have to worry about antitrust or anti-competition rules and regulations, to be able to collaborate and develop best practices on certain mobility topics. So again, another vote for collaboration.
Sure. One thing too, I'll add here, Mark, sorry, that I didn't think about before, but coming from a standards background prior to my role at the university, I also recognize and see the value that nonprofits bring in bringing collaborators together in a neutral, convening way to drive standards and certification, right? Not everybody can do that. Not everybody has the neutral capabilities of fostering conversations and driving consensus-driven standards. So obviously SAE and other nonprofits do that type of work, but that's not something you can necessarily get from an industry stakeholder or even often, an academic partner. So that piece is definitely an extra added level of value also.
Yeah, thanks for that. I think about my own team. We collaborate on a daily basis looking for relevant funded opportunities that are central to mobility, because that's kind of our DNA at SAE, right? Anything mobility related, whether it's Department of Transportation, Department of Energy, even Department of Defense. And so there are times when we see things that are opportunities that are relevant, but there could be part of the scope of work that's just beyond our capability. And so we have found that collaborating with universities, especially with research, especially with things that are more aligned with university capabilities, that if we can build a team, we have better credibility in front of government stakeholders, that we do have a breadth and depth of capability that is going to execute on a statement of work on time, within budget. And then again, we make a greater impact as we collaborate together.
Definitely. There's not one organization that can do it all, right? So I think we're definitely better working together and leveraging the resources of each other.
So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit. I know we've got some collaboration already started. I know that we have some plans in the works that we can't talk about right now. But this model seems to be, producing fruit and demonstrating success. How do you see us, University of Michigan and SAE being proactive together, looking for relevant government funding and shaping significant future impact in the mobility space?
Yeah, definitely. My team is out there every day looking for the next opportunity to fill needs that we see out there in the market. But I think doing that, making that effort together, but also, I think there's a significant opportunity because we are in a very interesting time when it comes to federal funding, right? There is a lot flowing down to us. That is not always the case. When I joined the university 8 years ago, it was very much a different scenario where we were out there more than we are already today, kind of in DC, creating the opportunities, creating the platform for where the funding is going to come from by really informing, our federal and our state partners with what are those needs our communities and companies are facing. How could we address them potentially to drive the development of programs and funding opportunities? Today, we're a little bit more, thankfully, we're a little bit more reactive to what is already flowing down, but we're not always going to be in that situation, right? So I think if we are able to work to partner together to start to create, continue to create those partnerships where our federal partners and others rely on us as that boots on the ground perspective around what is needed around programming to drive opportunity from the bottom up, that there's a tremendous opportunity for us to partner in that way.
Absolutely. And I think it's worth mentioning that, SAE has an affiliate that's advocating with those relevant agencies, making them aware of listening to problem statements and making, government stakeholders aware of what our capabilities are, and some similar work that we're already doing with other universities. And I think just having an open communication loop between us will certainly help in the future, because there's a tremendous challenge ahead of us in terms of adoption of electric vehicles and energy storage and supply chain resiliency. So we're going to have plenty of work to do for sure.
Definitely. More than enough to go around, right?
Absolutely. So I think I have some questions. I want to transition to reading some of those. The first one is, does the University of Michigan collaborate? This is probably a question that came maybe in the middle of the program, because I think we talked about this, but does the University of Michigan collaborate with other universities and community colleges?
Yeah, I can answer that also, just elaborate on it a little bit more. Definitely, yes, both. We have had programming that has spanned beyond Michigan. For example, the Defense Manufacturing Assistance Program, one of our millions of acronyms, DMAP, was a Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana funded program from DoD, where we actually partnered with Purdue University, and I'll say it out loud, but Ohio State was actually a partner of ours. And the team worked tremendously well together. We know that they know the companies in their states better than we do, right? And so they have those relationships, they know their local resources, and they did a wonderful job in helping support this program. Likewise, on the community college level, particularly on our workforce development efforts, again, we know that not every student that has a training need, whether it's your traditional university structure or upskilling and reskilling, is going to come through our doors. So the approach we're taking there, particularly with the Electric Vehicle Center, is kind of that train the trainer approach. So we are holding different boot camps, for example, to support our community college partners and helping them get upskilled themselves on the technology, but also helping them think about, like, how can they design their laboratory space? They have many kind of engine labs now, but they need to start converting those to EV or have an EV focus. So what equipment do they need? And helping them to learn from what we've learned so far. And there's that has been working really well, and we are planning to do some more of those boot camps this summer.
Great. Awesome. Thanks for that.
Sure.
Next question. How do you see industry participating in this collaboration to solve mobility challenges with government funding?
Yeah, particularly there's a tremendous opportunity, one for small to medium-sized manufacturers to get engaged with the consortium in particular. There's tons of resources available, whether it's technology development, technical assistance, the workforce development programming. So engaging with the consortium, you can check it out on our website or any of our partners' websites that I mentioned. There's probably a link to the consortium, and getting on the list so that we can share those resources with you all. That's one step. Obviously, also making us aware of the capabilities and capacity that you have. We want to make sure that we have all of our businesses listed on that asset mapping, because the worst thing that could be is that you're not on that list, and then DoD doesn't know that's an option for them in terms of areas of opportunity. Those are kind of a couple of things I can think of off the top of my mind.
Thank you. Next question is, do you do work with the Department of Transportation and the Department of Energy? I think we mentioned that earlier, but yes, I mean, SAE International, for example, has an IDIQ contract with the Department of Transportation to do a broad scope with them. I mentioned the work that we're doing with Argonne National Lab, which is Department of Energy work, to create an ICE to EV playbook. And we continue to have dialogue, especially with the Department of Energy. I know that, Ashley, you have great dialogue with our president for Sustainable Mobility Solutions, Frank Menchaca, and Michael Paris. And, we're talking about collaborating further. So I just see, us doing more and more things there. So the answer is yes, we're doing more work with Department of Transportation and Department of Energy. If you want to elaborate, Ashley, go ahead.
Yeah, the only other thing I would add that I haven't mentioned a ton about is on our community development team, we do have funding right now from Department of Energy, actually to support 11 communities throughout the state that we know are very likely to see a significant impact due to the change in the manufacturing base in their community from ICE to EV. And that planning activity is going on right now. We had a whole series of listening sessions with those communities here over the last few months. And then we'll really be digging deep with them to help them develop some strategic plans and provide training and technical assistance to the communities to get ahead of that transition so we can hopefully mitigate the impacts before they happen. So that is really important and obviously works in parallel with all the supply chain work.
Great. One last question. Who should we contact to learn more about how to collaborate with SAE Government Technologies? I guess I could be a first stop. My email is mark.pickett@sae-itc.org. And I will do my best to get back in touch. But yeah, I receive inquiries all the time from industry and from academia on certain projects. And so you can also connect with us on LinkedIn, SAE Government Technologies. Would look forward to building our community in LinkedIn and social media. I want to thank Charlie and Tracy, the dynamic duo in the background, turning all the knobs and making us look so great. And Ashley, thank you so much again for your time. Appreciate it. You brought tremendous perspective and really added value to this discussion. So I look forward to working with you a lot more in the future.
You're welcome. And likewise, I think our partnership's just begun, so I'm excited to see what happens in the next few years.
Awesome. Have a wonderful afternoon, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye now.